Retrospective is one of the most useful tools for any engineering manager. However, if it's not done well, it becomes a waste of time. After a few retrospectives, people often become disengaged. They don't want to bring new ideas, they don't want to bring new problems. Today, I will tell you why it happens and how to run retrospectives in a way that teams stay productive and engaged for months and months. Hi everyone, I'm Gregory. I'm currently a senior engineering manager at Booking.com, and over the last decade, I participated in or facilitated dozens of retrospectives, and I could clearly see which ones kept the team engaged and which ones didn't. And today I will give you some tips so that the retrospective that you organize helps the team to improve. And towards the end of the video, I will give you one special tip, one thing that will massively increase the engagement in your retrospective and will keep the people happy. But let's start from the beginning. What is a retrospective? Well, it's a meeting where people come and talk about what happened in the last couple of days, weeks, or months, and they bring some ideas about what they can change to improve their work. Now, what is the goal of the retrospective? There is one single goal. No, it's not to let the team vent. It's not to complain about the manager or the leadership of the company. The point of the retrospective is change, it's improvement. If retrospective helps the team to improve, to do their work better, it's a valuable thing. If the retrospective doesn't result in improvement, it's a waste of time. So how should you organize the retrospective? First, let's talk about some things that don't really matter that much. Whether it's online or whether it's in the office, it doesn't matter. The time also doesn't matter that much. Just book something reasonable, like 60-90 minutes. Anything above that might be too long for people to sit together and brainstorm. What retrospective format should you use? If you look at some agile toolkits, you will see that there are just 50 different formats of retrospective. Pick one, pick a simple one. My favorite type is just 2 columns for people to play, 2 questions to ask. What went well and what we need to improve. Frequency. If you use Scrum, then you should probably do it at the end of every sprint. If you're lucky and you don't use Scrum, I recommend doing it once a month. Remember that retrospective is about the change. So from one retrospective to another, there must be some time that the change that you discussed before can happen. If you organize retrospective every week, then it gives very little time to introduce the improvements from the previous retrospective. What tools should you use? When I run online retrospectives, I use tools like Go Retro or Easy Retro. They are tools that are dedicated to running retrospectives. But you don't need to start with something like this. You can start with a simple Google Doc or a Miro board or whatever. It doesn't matter that much. Just pick something, later in the future you can change it. Now the meeting itself. Retrospective consists of 3 stages: gathering the data, analyzing the problems, choosing the solutions. The first stage, gathering the data. In this stage, you ask the whole team to start writing down the things that made them happy or that made them sad, the things that they want to keep doing or they want to change. You need to give people 10 to 15 minutes so that they can think about it, so that they can write it all down. And later, when everyone finishes, you can deduplicate these things because lots of ideas will be similar, lots of problems will be the same, just deduplicate them. At the end of this stage, you will end up with lists of things that people want to talk about, and that's when you go to stage 2, which is to analyze the problems. How do you do that? You let the people talk about the things that they wrote down. When you write down a thing during the retrospective, you don't write the whole essay. You write just a simple idea. You write a single sentence. Then during the stage number 2, you can talk about it more. People can add something to that problem. People can ask questions to see whether they understand this problem well. This stage is about analyzing the problems. It's not about discussing the solutions. This is a very important part. Now, at the end of this stage, everyone should understand everything that is on the board. They should understand all the problems that were described. And that's when you go to stage number 3. But you might end up with a very long list and you might not have enough time to discuss all of them. So in that case, what you can do is ask people to vote on 3 or 5 most important items to them, and then you can sort the items by number of votes, and that's what you will discuss later. That's the order in which you will discuss the items, and you will go as far as you can considering the time constraint. And the stage number 3 is discussing and choosing the solutions. During this stage, you want every problem to be addressed in a certain way. Some problems are completely out of the team's control, and the team should acknowledge that. For example, something related to a teammate leaving is something that just cannot be addressed by the team. Or if the company decided to cancel a big project, we can't do anything about it. So then we can just acknowledge it. Okay, it sucks, but we can't change it. So we just acknowledge that we're not happy about it. But most of the problems have at least some kind of a solution or something that the team can do in order to improve it. So for that items, you want to pick a certain solution. It may result in one or more action items. As a facilitator, you should create a list of these action items that will address these problems. At the end of this stage, you should end up with a new list of action items that will be addressing these problems. Now you might have again a long list of action items, and not all of them can be implemented immediately. Some of them may take a week, some of them may take a few months. So normally what I do is I go through this list and I try to ensure that we have at least 2 or 3 items that we commit to address. And then I ask who in the team wants to be responsible for that. It doesn't mean that that person will necessarily do it themselves, but they will follow up, they will keep the team updated, they will reach out to other teams to get that action item done. And that's how you wrap up the meeting. You end it with the list of action items. Make sure to write it down somewhere so that everyone can later easily find them. If needed, move it to your Trello board or your Jira board or whatever. Make sure that they are very visible and that it is clear who's assigned to these action items. Now, as you can see, this retrospective is pretty simple. I do not use any fancy formats. I've seen people using the fancy stuff like there is a boat and an island and this is a metaphor for us being a team where it goes somewhere. I think that it just adds a lot of complexity and it doesn't really allow people to express themselves. Similarly, other formats like what should we start doing, what should we stop doing, what we should continue doing are not great because it already asks for a solution. It doesn't ask for a problem. Let's say that someone says that we should do more pair programming. It doesn't say why, it doesn't say what problem it solves. Is that person feeling lonely? Do they feel that they cannot contribute much or they are new and they need help with onboarding? There are so many problems that might have pair programming as a solution. If you ask initially for a solution, you're starting from the wrong foot. So I always ask just 2 things. What went well in the last month and what we should improve. And that way, I'm asking for problems to be solved and later we come up with solutions. Now time for the one pro tip that will turn your retrospective from good to fantastic. The one thing that will keep your team engaged. And that thing is following up on the items from previous retrospective. So after the first retrospective, every other one, I start with 5 minutes of looking back at the items that we did collect in the last retrospective. And not only I look at these items, I always try to ensure that at least one item is marked as completed. I, as a manager, always make sure to assign at least a simple thing to myself, and I make sure that this thing gets done. I also follow up between the retrospectives with people to encourage them to address the action points, to make sure that they follow up, that more stuff gets completed. But this is a single thing. This is the one thing that is rarely mentioned in any agile books, but it makes a huge difference. If you come to retrospective and people do not see that something changed from the last time, then they will not see the value. But if you come there and just in 3 to 5 minutes, you go through the items from the last retro and you say, yep, this is done, this is still in progress, this is not started yet, but we will start soon. People will say, hey, actually things are getting done, things are getting better, and that will make them write more. That will help them realize that, hey, if I say something, it might get done. So if something doesn't work for me, this is the place, this is time where I can write it, where I can express it, and where I know that this will be addressed. So that's it, folks. The retrospective doesn't have to be and shouldn't be complicated. It should be a simple meeting that results in action items that later will help the team improve. Retrospective is about the change. It's not about the defensive format. It's not about venting, though it might allow the team to vent. It's about the change. And that's all from me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Take care.